Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Hello, Cinesmackers, and welcome back to the podcast that drinks your milkshake. Drink it up. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me is owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom Haggis.
Hey, how you doing, everybody?
Owner of One Genome Short. Is it Productions or Films or Studio?
Productions.
All right. One Genome Short Productions, Gabe Rowald.
I want to make enough money to get away from everyone.
And 515 Productions, Mr. Sam Twomey.
Hi, Rosebud.
Just real quick, this one is going to be difficult for me, but if anyone's seen our film from one of the 48 years called Bromance, I was so in love with There Will Be Blood that I actually tried to pull off my own accent in the film as the salesman. So if you're interested in Mike doing a really bad impersonation of Daniel Day-Lewis in this film, go check it out. But
that's what you were trying to do there? I could never understood why you had such a weird...
Yes, that's what I was
trying to do. Just a weird characterization.
Good day. Good day, gentlemen. I happen to be driving by, and I noticed a crack in your foundation. I still remember all the lines.
I hope our listeners check that out, because it is definitely worth it.
It's on YouTube. Just search Bromance. But yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I practiced that for like 2 hours. Can't you tell, Sam? All right, let me poke the monkey, and we'll get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, moguls and barons, welcome to the main event. Tonight, we have a tycoon tussle of titanic proportions as Daniel Plainview and Charles Foster Kane step into the ring. Who will drink whose milkshake? In the first quarter, from 1941, directed by Orson Welles, starring Orson Welles, Joseph Cotton, and Dorothy Cummingore, Citizen Kane. In the second quarter, from 2007, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dad, and Cian Hines, There Will Be Blood!
Is there anything you guys would like to add before we start the rounds?
These are two of my favorite movies. I absolutely love them, and I don't. There are probably about 24 times when I was watching it, where I was just like, "Oh my god, this is so good." And I don't know. These movies are kind of like being married in that, you love the person you marry more every day. And every time I watch these movies, I'm like, I can't possibly like There Will Be Blood any more than I already do. And then I watch it, I'm like, yes, I do. I love it more than I loved it yesterday. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Tom left.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right. That was fun. Thanks, guys.
Well,
Yep.
I think we have an idea of where Tom's going to go with this one.
All right. Before we get going, let me ring the bell. We'll start with writing. Gentlemen, it's up to you.
Well, yeah, this is a tough one. When we get into a situation where we have two great movies like this, dare I say classic movies, even though There Will Be Blood isn't really that old. It's kind of an instant classic. When we get into a situation like that, it's really hard to make decisions between these movies, and it's really, you have to get really nitpicky, I think, in order to kind of choose a winner like we do. And I think this spot's going to be very difficult on that level. I think the writing is obviously very strong for both. I mean, Citizen Kane won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. what, 41, Tom? Would that be right?
I believe so.
Yes.
But
Yeah. So
that's the only thing it won. I'm sure we're going to talk about that when we get into it, but I didn't realize that it was really blackballed so much by Hearst that during its contemporary timing, it didn't get, it was kind of like pushed down for many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think There Will Be Blood didn't win as many Oscars as you might expect either. And again, since Tom is our local Oscar expert, it win? It won just a couple, didn't it, Tom? Like cinematography and
Daniel Day-Lewis, I believe.
and Daniel Day-Lewis. That's right. Yeah, I think that's right. So considering how powerful these movies are and how well done they are, it is a little bit interesting that they didn't get a little more love, from the Oscar standpoint. But from a writing standpoint, I don't know. It's gonna be really difficult for me to make a decision here. Now I haven't really watched Citizen Kane for a long time, probably since I was in college. Because obviously we watched it in our classes for in our film classes, and it had been so long that I really didn't remember certain parts of it. There was a lot of it that I was like, oh, I didn't remember that part of it at all. There's certain moments that I remembered very clearly, but others it's like, oh no, I didn't remember that. And I think, despite of its fact is its status as a classic, I think it's maybe kind of showing its age a little bit. I think, maybe a little bit. What is that?
You just cut Tom deeply.
And I felt like there were certain points where, well, one of the things that I don't like in writing is when we're being told something instead of, especially like film writing, when we're being told something instead of shown it. And I think there were certain times where, like in Citizen Kane, the moral of the story was kind of like handed to us, like at the end, they're saying, well, maybe we'll never know what Rosebud was, and perhaps it was something he lost or something, from his past, and I felt like that was a little bit kind of ham-handed way of giving us the moral. I mean, is that
better than just ending so abruptly with a guy dead and, you fill in the rest of that story?
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting ending to There Will Be Blood too. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I liked about There Will Be Blood, and maybe this doesn't necessarily fall into writing, although I think it does kind of, is there was a large portion of the movie, especially at the beginning, where we were shown, not told, what was going on. We simply watched him doing his thing and slowly building this empire and making money. And there's hardly even any dialogue. So that I really appreciated that about the beginning of There Will Be Blood. But I agree with you, Sam, that the ending of There Will Be Blood it was shocking for sure. And I'm not quite sure what it was trying to say, but I have to be honest, this is the first time I've seen it. So I haven't really had a full amount of time to kind of digest it and really understand it.
Well, this is only my second time seeing There Will Be Blood all the way through, and the first time like really paying attention to it, like really trying to soak it up. And I hear what you're saying, Gabe. I think they really didn't tell you a lot in the screenplay of There Will Be Blood. They let you kind of put those clues together. Like you weren't sure at first that, at least I wasn't, that it was necessarily his twin brother that lived with the family. At first you were like, is this the same guy? Is he crazy?
Yeah, I thought it was too, and then I was like, why did he introduce himself as Eli? Is this like some kind of... And then there was that whole thing where he jumps across the table and says that, that was our brother. It's our brother, my brother, or whatever. I was like, what? Yeah, I didn't quite get that at first either.
Well, and I think in some ways, too, the writing really does reflect the times that both of them were made in. You've got Citizen Kane back in the 40s and in the early ages of motion pictures. I don't think audiences would have been able to keep up or follow a story like There Will Be Blood, or especially, even some of the brutality that's part of it. I don't think an audience at that time, not to take anything away from them, but just their visual language of film was so much different than how we soak it up now. Just as Citizen Kane might see a little bit, I know you weren't that happy with. You saw that it was basically telling its age and the way that it told its story. But in some ways, I like that. I like the simplicity of that. And even though there's words there that are telling you, oh, we may never know, we may not this, the filmmakers kind of give you that without saying it. Even though the character who's the narrator never gets what Rosebud is. But the audience is let in on that. And I think even though he's telling us all this, the audience in Citizen Kane is putting that filter on there that brings everything into focus. Whereas if you didn't have that filter of that audience, it would be kind of one-sided from the narrators. It wouldn't be perfectly focused. But because of the balance of the two, the writing really kind of, at least I feel, Citizen Kane brings you in as like a friend. And you're still doing your detective work and kind of putting things together about who this man was. But the fact that they wrote it about this feared, newspaper man at the time, they were very, Orson Welles was very full speed ahead with, I'm going to attack this figure that's bigger than life and damn be the consequences. Well, that could, he made one of the best movies of all time, but it also could have changed the way his career would have went if he wouldn't have focused on such a figure. So to me, the writing in Citizen Kane, they've got a lot of balls to write that kind of script in a world where powerful men like that weren't taken or called out very much.
The story, I think, one of the cool part about this too, and what I love about the podcast too, is when we throw, because we threw Citizen Kane and There Will Be Blood in together because they're considered two of the best films of their time, I think. And to the point earlier we were talking about the Oscars, I think they're also two films that really underline how irrelevant the Oscars can become. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you threw There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men back in the ring, There Will Be Blood, I think, would win. And I think 50 years from now, There Will Be Blood will stand toe-to-toe with Citizen Kane as one of the greatest films of all time because it's so good. And what's interesting, too, is the other things that we see about it, that this is actually, they're both character studies about big-time businessmen and the people that kind of come in and out of their lives. And they're both stories about loneliness and capitalism. And it's amazing how similar that these movies are outside of what we originally paired them up as. The Citizen Kane story, I think, on paper, and I do love the There Will Be Blood story, but the Citizen Kane one on paper is such a great skeleton to hang one of the greatest movies of all time on, and it's such a solid script, and I don't think in There Will Be Blood, in the script, you really get the depth of Daniel Plainview's character like you would in the script for Citizen Kane. I think Charles Foster Kane in the script form is a lot more in depth, and I think that's kind of why I prefer the Citizen Kane script to the There Will Be Blood. I think There Will Be Blood's magic lies in one of our later categories.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this while I was watching these two movies, and I thought we could almost have made this a three-way bout and thrown the Aviator into
my.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the Aviator?
Yeah, because, you're talking about three large moguls. Of course, the Aviator is a biography film, but I don't know. I just saw it as three of these larger-than-life characters.
I think
in their time were just larger than life, and whether they're fictional or not fictional, just the writing. Getting to the writing part, I agree with Tom. The Citizen Kane script is just beautiful, where I think There Will Be Blood might shine a little bit more down in the later categories. But sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
I think you're both absolutely right. And I think in some reason is because of the hand of Orson Welles in writing Citizen Kane as well.
Yeah.
Because he was so well trained in writing characters and, building that audio dialogue from his radio days that he knew he was going to be performing this lead character. But also he was able to help craft that dynamic so that, he started to flesh out that performance on the page well before he even started, acting in costumes. Whereas, Daniel Day-Lewis didn't have that hand in the writing, but as you both alluded to, just, hit it out of the park in the acting category, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
All right. Tom, Gabe, were you guys going to say something before I interrupted you?
Oh, I was just going to make a joke that I'm not sure I could have watched a third 2+ hour movie for this one podcast.
Oh, I see how we rate, Gabe.
Yeah. Well, geez, There Will Be Blood and Citizen Kane were a lot of movie to digest, and all at once. I'm not sure this podcast would have been 3 hours itself.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with Sam. Like, you kind of watch it again, but this time you're watching it for the podcast, so you pick out all these little details that you've never seen before, even if you'd seen it, let's say 10 times or however many Tom's seen it. But I noticed just watching it now with my glasses on for Cinesmack, there were little things that I noticed that made me love each film even more. But go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, and I was just going to say, I love The Aviator, and it's really great. But I think we kind of have what we had with Christmas Vacation, where I think it's really good, but I don't think Aviator's quite as good as There Will Be Blood and Citizen Kane, and I think it'd just be on the outside looking in at the other two. So, thematically, I think we match up, but I don't know about quality-wise.
Tom?
Yeah.
Abducted by an alien.
You're being abducted.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, something's going on.
Yeah, I'm glad that's recorded, though, because if we ever need to recreate that sound effect for a movie, we'll exactly what we do.
There he is.
I got a short in my cable.
Save that cable. Don't get rid of it. We might need it for alien voice sometime.
Okay.
Make sure you mark it alien voice cable. All right, let's go ahead and vote. I didn't even start the timer just because I don't even know if we need timers on these films.
Dear
I
Lord,
think we should be able to talk.
Yeah,
all right, Gabe.
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to give the edge to There Will Be Blood, in part because of some of the dialogue that I really liked in certain parts of the movie. I just really felt like some of the dialogue was very compelling. Not that it wasn't in Citizen Kane. This is tough, but I think I'm going to give it to There Will Be Blood.
All right, Sam.
Kane.
Nice. Tom.
Citizen Kane.
All right. God, I've got like all these juicy nuggets, and I'm just remembering last time Sam's like, God, Mike, you have a lot of useless knowledge. And I was like, thanks. William Randolph Hearst was infatuated by Citizen Kane, obviously based on his life. According to an essay written for the New York Review of Books by Gore Vidal, Rosebud was Hearst's name for longtime mistresses Marion Davies' clitoris.
Yeah, baby.
But screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz insisted that he took the name from a bicycle he owned as a child. So yeah, think about that.
Can you imagine William Hearst sitting in a movie theater and that fucking comes up and be like, oh my God, how do they know that?
Yeah, exactly.
How did they find that out? Yeah.
Holy shit.
And just see the mistress like sitting next to him like, you said you would never tell. Daniel Day-Lewis improvised the speech he gives to the citizens of Little Boston about building schools, bringing bread to the town, etc. Paul Thomas Anderson says of this, it was delicious. It was Plainview on a platter. So there you go. All right, let's move on to acting.
I think this might be a shorter category. I think there was a lot of tremendous performances in Citizen Kane. The most remembered, of course, is Orson Welles and his ability at such a young age to portray such gravitas of a character and realistically with, early makeup techniques portray an elderly Kane just as well. But I think the acting here is There Will Be Blood. And when you see Daniel Day-Lewis and his performance, it's just, you are at least I was just totally totally engaged and couldn't look away. Just even his subtleties of the way he would breathe and the slight gestures of his eyes. That's what acting for the big screen is all about. It's those little teeny elements of character and not necessarily the inflection of the voice. And he had everything as far as I'm concerned. Like it's really hard to compete with him in that category.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Sam. I think that, I thought Joseph Cotton and Ray Collins, who were two of the supporting characters in Citizen Kane, were really good. And I thought they were actually better than Orson Welles in the acting part. But Daniel Day-Lewis, going back to what I had said about the whole, the heart of There Will Be Blood, I think, is in the acting, in that Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano do such a great job. One case in point, one part that wasn't in the script is after the baptism, and after Eli slaps him around a little bit, Daniel gets up out of the chair and he turns around and he goes and he has this conversation with Eli. And we aren't privy to it. We don't get to hear what the two of them say to each other, and it's not in the script. I don't, and no one really knows if this is something that Paul Thomas Anderson had them do or Daniel Day-Lewis just did it. But that little 10-second scene, I absolutely love it because you can't see Daniel Day-Lewis's face at all, but you can see Paul Dano's, and you know exactly what's going down. And just the absolute fear and the color draining from his face, whatever Daniel Plainview says to him it's one of my top 10 film moments of all time. I absolutely love it, and it gives me chills. And that's the acting right there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we're not going to have a lot of smack on this category for sure because. I'm in total agreement with you guys. Daniel Day-Lewis is just phenomenal. He really is kind of mesmerizing. You just can't look away, and you're like, oh my God, And I just think it was such a nuanced performance of a nuanced character. He's all at once, just like frighteningly, like violent, and at the same time, very gentle and caring. It's so weird, and Daniel Day-Lewis strikes that balance so well, his delivery of the lines is good. I liked his voice. I read an article saying that they thought maybe he started with some of the physical characteristics of this character before he got into the more psychological or emotional characteristics, including things like the voice and his walk, after he hurts his leg and those kinds of things. And because those are part of that character, and that's a very visual way to portray that character on film. And with Citizen Kane, I think it was still in the time period where there's still kind of it's still early enough in film history that a lot of the acting is a little bit still kind of stage acting like. It's very big, it's very grand. And it doesn't yet have the nuance that Sam referred to for film, and so I feel like at times I felt like it was almost on the edge of being campy, although it was very good. Orson, there's that sound again. What is that? I think there's something in your cable. There's definitely something wrong with that cable. It's like I don't know what.
Yeah,
it is.
There's something in my cable. These really weird, obnoxious voices are coming through, and I.
Right, yeah.
They're totally real.
Tom, you need to take that cable out and mark that as the surprise cable. Whenever.
Surprise. Yeah, no. I mean, Orson Welles is very commanding as an actor. He's got this great voice and this real presence, but I think Daniel Day-Lewis really hit the nuance of it. He really, I think he's one of those guys who falls into kind of the method category where he is that character for a period of time. He is that person. He lives that person for a period of time, and you can really tell.
I thought sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the genius parts I thought about There Will Be Blood, and this probably goes back to the script, but the scenes with Mary Sunday and Daniel Plainview are just really, really genius because we all saw Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York, and we know he can be menacing when he was Bill the Butcher. But it was those
there
real
goes
tender
again,
moments.
Tom.
What's that? What's that?
Your alien voice is back.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm like keeping my head firmly still so it doesn't go. All right, is that all right?
Nope.
Nope.
Still there.
Are you calling in from Uranus?
Don't be an asshole. Oh, jeez. Am I gone?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So anyway, my point was just the Merry Sunday scenes with Daniel Day-Lewis. I thought were the ones that really made his character a lot deeper, to show that he really did have a tender side and a protective side of those who couldn't protect himself. And I don't think the movie would have been as powerful if it was like, hey, this guy's a giant asshole and he's super evil and he kills people on a whim. I think it's a lot more interesting to see that he actually can be protective and take care of those weaker people.
Well, right, and even with his interactions with his quote unquote son, you never really felt like, he says at the end that, oh, I just needed a cute face to help me build my empire, to make people trust me and so I used you, but you never really felt like that was the truth. You felt like he just said that in anger, that he really did care for that boy. And and again, that's part of the dichotomy of that character, where he's all at once, he's just like literally a ruthless killer, and on one hand, and on another hand, he's very tender and protective of the things that he loves.
Well, sure, and I think maybe he believed it at the point he was telling it to the boy, but yet as an audience, we saw that there was those moments that he loved him, and I believe that character could probably have it both ways. Because it started that he needed him to help with his business, but then just the pure, vile things that he says to him at the end were just, you think if he had any respect for him at any point, how could you say that?
Right.
It's just
right. That's when you realize he really is self-serving and sure. egoistic. That's the point where you realize that when threatened, that's what he resorts to. And right. no one is safe.
I love the way, and some of this is the writing, but a lot of it's the performance and delivery. The way he delivers that portion of his monologue or his dialogue there with such civility, but yet so biting and hurtful that you almost don't see it coming in the way his delivery starts out. It's kind of mocking and jokey, and then it just gets to pure viciousness, like in the speed of a second, and it's just wonderful to watch.
I think a lot of that too comes out of loneliness. I think Daniel Plainview is an incredibly lonely character, and that's something that in this viewing I've noticed a lot when I was watching that Paul Thomas Anderson did a really great job of showing how isolated Daniel Plainview is. In that aspect, it kind of brings in some of those themes of Westerns that we talk about a lot, and I think that that's one of the things that I really, really liked about the film is that it's, I think he's in that way, he's kind of a sympathetic character, but it seems like every time anybody gets close to him, he finds a reason to isolate himself again and build up that wall. And he's such a fascinating character, and I just love watching this movie over and over again. So,
well, everyone's talking about Daniel Day-Lewis, but I want to point out Paul Dano's performance.
It sucked.
Are you serious?
It was so over the top.
Oh, I'm
fucking
yeah, thanks, Tom. Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the greatest actors of, I think it's safe to say, of all time.
Ever?
You're talking about Citizen Kane, directed by Orson Welles, who really kind of started some of the how do I want to? He's a master of certain techniques that are still used today. But I want to talk about Paul Dano's performance. What'd you guys think? I personally, he knocked me off my seat in the film. I was already halfway off my seat thanks to Daniel Day-Lewis, but when Paul Dano shows up and he goes nuts, just totally knocked off my seat. How do you guys feel?
I think you're right. I think he proved he he was acting on the same kind of playing field. Like Daniel Day-Lewis set the tone for the entire cast, and he stepped up. Like I'd only see Paul Dano before that in Little Miss Sunshine and Fast Food Nation, and he was, good for what his parts were, but nothing that was, over the top memorable, or what I saw in those early films as, there was some torture in Little Miss Sunshine, but that was about it. But then to see him in these roles, I think it was a real step up for him to, because how intimidating is that playing against, aside
Daniel Day-Lewis, exactly.
And he, whether he was nervous or not, he stepped up and delivered an incredible performance. And I think a lot of that probably will also be some of his direction that he received. But still, he's an amazing actor, which again I think why There Will Be Blood easily is going to win this category.
Yeah, I figured that this bout was going to come down to the acting and directing. Essentially, the acting was going to go one way and the directing was going to go another. Now, we haven't gotten to directing yet, but we'll see if I'm right.
Let's do it.
All right, you ready? All right, votes first. Sam.
Aviator.
All right.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, God,
there will be
what?
There will be blood.
Gabe.
Yeah, There Will Be Blood.
And Tom.
Yes, There Will Be Blood.
All right. So far, how I thought. But let's move on. Oh, wait. I got some fun facts. Daniel Day-Lewis based his voice for and characterization of Daniel Plainview in part on old recordings of the director, writer, and actor John Huston. An article by Christopher Goodwin in the Sunday Times of London revealed Paul Thomas Anderson sent Day-Lewis documentaries about Hudson while Day-Lewis was prepping to play the role. I found that kind of interesting because I like John Huston movies. The scene where Kane destroys Susan's room after she's left him was done on the first take. Director star Orson Welles' hands were bleeding, and he is quoted as saying, "I really felt it."
Yeah, I'm sure the production designer's like, "Yeah, I felt it too. That was good."
Yeah.
Crying over in the corner.
We don't need to reset. That's good. Good on one take.
Why did you break my shelves?
Yeah.
All right.
Those are antiques.
Let's move on to directing. Gentlemen.
All right, so I'm going to first say that I love Paul Thomas Anderson. In fact, one of my children is partially named after him, Anderson Thomas. So I am a huge Paul Thomas Anderson fan, as about as much as you can imagine. So it's going to kind of break my heart to tell you that Orson Welles, hands down, wins this category for me. I'll tell you right up front, because the pioneering vision that he had and his knowledge of...
Oh, God. Alien voice is back.
Are you freaking kidding me? You
No.
know what? Am I gone?
Nope, you're still there.
Okay. I think my wife's on Netflix, so... sorry. I've texted her and told her to get off.
That's all right.
I mean, stop watching Netflix. So anyway...
Sorry, I was a little late to the party on that one. Thanks, Tom.
Oh, that's okay. That's what she said. Anyway, thanks for coming. Anyway, so
here we go.
Oh boy.
What Orson Welles was able to do with the camera and his knowledge of being able to get the visions he wanted out of the cameras without the use of computers or special effects or special effects in terms of how we see them today is groundbreaking. And the Citizen Kane for a director is it is a film class unto itself. You can learn so much from just sitting down and watching the movie in 2 hours than you can from looking through a lot of film textbooks. And there's a reason Citizen Kane continues to endure through the years, and a lot of that is Orson Welles directing and his different use of lenses and camera placements. And it goes on and on and on, the way that he was able to put the story together. And I think before Citizen Kane, there was not a lot of emphasis for directors on using composition and camera placement to help tell the story more and to help put the audience in a position where something as simple as the way someone is positioned on the screen to help make the story deeper. And Orson Welles was able to do that, and we're still doing it today. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson would agree with me that it's it's changed the way that I think Citizen Kane changed the way that people made movies.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I was really impressed actually with both the directing in both of these movies. But the one thing that really stood out for me in Citizen Kane is the frame composition. The composition in those frames was just beautiful. There were times where just the lines, and the interesting part of the composition is it wasn't just left to right or top to bottom. It was in depth as well.
Mm-hmm.
The composition and depth was just amazing. And there are times when they're like in the Inquirer offices, and there are these big beams on the ceiling, and they just create this interesting, like I don't know, focus where they bring focus to the characters. There's this interesting depth to these beams, and these characters are standing in very particular locations. And I would have liked to seen how they set that up, And you were talking about the camera placement. It's just amazing at times. There's times when the camera is really, really low, and I had heard stories about they cut a hole in the floor so they could get the camera that low. And
he took an axe, actually, didn't he? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
I don't know.
He took an axe and just started smashing the floor so he could get the camera down.
Well, I can imagine that.
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
And then the other thing that really surprised me a little bit is the amount of very fluid, very accurate camera movement in Citizen Kane. There's a lot of really great camera movement. And then there's some interesting techniques too. Tom mentioned earlier, special effects or visual effects as we know them today. There were some. They definitely utilized some, but they were a little bit more subtle, and they certainly weren't as complicated as what we're kind of used to today. But they used them very effectively, and I think that's the key. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be really cool. It just has to be effective in telling the story. And one of the ones that comes to mind is, where you're coming across the top of the building and you see the sign that says, I can't remember her name, his singing wife's name. What was her name?
Susan Alexander.
Yes.
Yeah, Susan Alexander Kane, 2 nights a week. And it goes through, the camera goes through the sign and then down through that skylight into the room where she's sitting. And, it's clear that there's some kind of camera trickery going on there. But it's very effective, and it's very interesting, and it really told the story well. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff in There Will Be Blood. There's also a very nice camera movement in that, and the cinematography is gorgeous. The use of color, the contrast between cool and warm colors. It's just beautiful cinematography, and that cinematography even kind of brings out some character traits at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the time where Daniel Plainview is sitting in the train station, and Eli is getting on the train to go on a mission, and he's leaving, and Daniel watches it leave, and the light, you can see the light as the train leaves, the light is changing on his face, and all of a sudden there's this bright light at the end that just kind of like, it's almost as if Eli is gone and a new day is kind of dawning for Plainview's character. Mm-hmm. And so even just the lighting and the cinematography brings a lot to that character. But I think he owes a lot of that to Orson Welles and Citizen Kane.
Well, Citizen Kane, I mean, there is a lot of great work in There Will Be Blood, but for both directing and cinematography, which there's a lot of talk in a lot of academic circles as to who the cinematographer, the director, contributed what to Citizen Kane. Because the cinematographer, who was Greg Toland, who had done John Ford's The Long Voyage Home before doing Citizen Kane, brought a tremendous amount of experience working with heavy, lots of visual in-camera effects as they were done at that time, compositing, and from what I just found out the other day from reading online sources about Greg Toland is that he a lot of the lenses and the techniques he used for some of the deep focus shots on Citizen Kane's were his own invention, and he was shooting at f-stops that were requiring faster film and more heavy duty lighting than anyone else had ever shot on. And a lot of the things that Orson Welles was doing, as a director, he was gracious enough to listen and really work in great tandem with his cinematographer. And there was different, reading back of people's accounts of what happened on the set. A lot of people remember that Orson Welles was giving the normal orders and whatnot. But years later, in one of Welles' biographies, he stated that he had been given tremendous advice from Toland, and before they were on set, and as not to be embarrassed as this young filmmaker. So in a lot of ways, Greg Toland took him under his wing and kind of said, "Here's the bag of tricks. Let's have fun." And for a film of that time to have so many of these types of techniques and things that we kind of take for granted now. I imagine that audiences were just, shocked by the ways some of these scenes were filmed, and then also the way that because of the way they were framing the shots, how beautiful all of the work that was done on these sets, and was able to actually make rooms look much bigger than they actually were. So I don't see how there's any competition here. I've got to say it's got to be Citizen Kane for me on this one.
Well, I remember Tom and I taught a troop of Boy Scouts for their cinematography merit badge. And I remember the disc that he brought of some clips from films. One was, which one from Citizen Kane did you bring? I can't remember because I watched it so much.
I brought the one with Emily and
that's right.
Emily and Charles eating breakfast. The scene where it kind of whips through their marriage real quick and shows them growing apart,
growing faster. Apart.
Yeah, and it's basically using set design and costuming to help underline the story as Emily's neckline of her dress kind of gets up and starts choking her as with each passing scene. So it's another great example of just the top to bottom awesomeness of Citizen Kane.
Right, and another one. Welles was into the whole cinematography as it was. Just watching Citizen Kane, but I'll never forget. I'd never seen the movie, and he showed me the clip of from Touch of Evil.
The beginning?
Yes,
the long
beginning.
Take. Yeah.
Like, I had
It's
no
amazing.
idea. But you look back at that, and it's like this guy was visionary, a visionary cinematographer. Even with these cameras that are enormous, they still found a way. And now you look at films today, and you can see what he left behind, because there's a lot of how directors and cinematographers are shooting stuff that still echo back to some of the shots that Orson Welles did. And
yeah, but we're shooting digital, so we're cheating.
Well, yeah.
So they were limited to
in camera
7 to 8 minutes to a reel, and we can shoot for a straight hour. We shoot a whole movie in one take.
Right. Exactly. But I'm just saying that even though it's easier on us, it's still kind of hard to reproduce a lot of the shots. You can, but they still don't look just like they did in Citizen Kane.
Right? You don't have the special lenses, and special techniques.
That's true. That's true. But I'm just saying, I knew it was going to come down to directing for Citizen Kane. Was probably going to be the big pick. But like you said, Paul Thomas Anderson, the cinematography. They won for cinematography, won an Oscar. It's absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. Just from always wanting to be a cinematographer, these two films have always been high on my list, just because I want to learn how to, I want to be able to capture scenes like that. I want to be able to capture shots like that. And sorry, go ahead. Is someone going to say something?
No.
I guess I just wasn't swept up by the cinematography and There Will Be Blood as much.
Okay.
Maybe I was just wrapped up in the acting,
in the performance. Well, absolutely.
possibly,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I didn't. It didn't resonate as much as it did with the other panelists apparently. With me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and put it to a vote, gentlemen. Tom.
Directing Citizen Kane.
All right. Gabe.
Yeah, Citizen Kane.
And Sam.
Citizen Kane.
Okie dokie. Speaking of some of the cinematography in There Will Be Blood, director Paul Thomas Anderson owns a vintage 1910 Path camera. Am I saying that? Pathe. I think it's Pathy or whatever. Camera which contains a special 43 millimeter lens. The lens was specially modified to be used in the film as it has very low resolution and can shift colors at corners. Only certain shots of the film use this lens. For example,
But it was
a shot of Plainview sleeping in the train with an infant HW.
Oh, I don't remember that. But I wondered about, there were some interesting shots when they had that gusher that started on fire.
Yes.
Around the edges of that frame, it was really strange.
I think they might have used it in that as well.
I'm wondering if that's what that was.
Paul Thomas Anderson also stated that he watched The Treasure of the Sierra Madre every night before filming this movie, just to kind of immerse himself in the world he was trying to recreate.
Is that the badges?
Yes.
We don't need no stinking badges.
Yes.
There's other stuff in that movie.
There
I know, but
Humphrey
what else does
Bogart
anybody
being one of
remember?
them. Is
Everybody
it
knows
Humphrey
the badges.
Bogart? Yeah, it's Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Yeah. When asked by friends how Kane's last words would be known when he died alone, Orson Welles reportedly stared for a long time before saying, "Don't you ever tell anyone of this." And the scene where, nope, that's not it. On the night the movie opened in San Francisco, Welles found himself alone with William Randolph Hearst in an elevator at the city's Fairmont Hotel. Aware that his father and Hearst were friends, Welles extended an invitation to the magnate to attend the premiere of Citizen Kane. Hearst disregarded the offer, and as Hearst was about to exit the elevator at his floor, Welles remarked, "Charles Foster Kane would have accepted." Just kind of a kick in the old nuts. But there you go. Let's move on to overall.
All right. So what do we have left to discuss about these movies? I mean, there's so much about these movies, and I think our categories kind of bled together a little bit. Maybe in the overall category, we often talk about things like music, or visual effects, special effects kind of thing.
Music for me, it goes to There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, but I thought it was kind of interesting at times that music. I thought there were times that the music was almost kind of counter to the tone of the film, where and maybe intentionally so, where the music was slightly upbeat, but it was kind of a a menacing or a disturbing moment, and it gave it almost a slightly comical twist. Like there's a slight bit of for lack of a better term, humor in this violence, if you will. Even the ending of, and maybe that's where we can go. Maybe we can talk about the endings of these. Even in the ending, his final line in "There Will Be Blood," "I'm finished." It was very interesting and almost comical. It was slightly comical, but also like highly true. He was truly finished in many ways at the end. So I don't know. I thought that I liked the music in "There Will Be Blood," but sometimes I felt like it was dissonant with the tone of what we were seeing.
You know what? A lot of people say, like, if an editor does their job, nobody should notice it. And I don't think that you can say the same for music. I don't have a problem with the music being chosen for a film to every now and then stand up and say, notice me. I don't think that it always has to be kind of subdued and kind of hang back and driving the themes. Alien voices back.
Yes, very very heavily.
There you go.
Hey, what's up?
There you go.
Hey,
It'd be funny if you did like the Citizen Kane speech in that, because it would sound like you're echoing to a large hall.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Boss
there's kind of an
Chip
echo,
Geddes. Anyway, so
Wow,
what I like about the music in There Will Be Blood is that it really kind of takes the Daniel Day-Lewis approach and says, stands up and says, "Notice me." And Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead did all the music for There Will Be Blood, and it was it's one of my favorite scores. And I'm not a big score person. We've talked before about people that some of you guys collect soundtracks and scores, and I'm not one of those guys. But the music in There Will Be Blood, I absolutely love it because it's one of the few things in the movie that actually rises to Daniel Day-Lewis's level in the performance that they contribute to the movie. I like the music in Citizen Kane and all, but There Will Be Blood, it's haunting, and I love every single choice that they make in it.
Yeah, and again, with Citizen Kane, do you feel like maybe it's kind of showing its age or its time period? What's that sound again?
Wrong cable.
You really need to fix that cable. As far as the music, I felt like the music was kind of in line with what moviegoers were used to hearing at the time. The music itself maybe didn't stand out as much as many of the other aspects of Citizen Kane. The acting, directing, cinematography, etc. I didn't dislike the music, but I just felt like, well, it's kind of 40s.
Sure.
film
Well, like you usually say in these podcasts, Gabe, it was serviceable. Like, it was fine. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't bad. But it worked for that. But you guys make a great point on the music of There Will Be Blood. I hadn't put my finger on that. I knew that there was something about it that really helped offset the performances and move the scenes. And hearing both Gabe and Tom reference that soundtrack, I think you guys are both right on that. It's if the category was score, I would totally go for There Will Be Blood, because I don't think Citizen Kane gave us much of a memorable score. But on other ends, I think both of them were very well costumed. I know we don't talk about costuming very much.
Yeah.
But
That's true too.
each in their own way, I think they were both brilliant. And There Will Be Blood, for some of the basic simplicity of those towns where they would be going to, as plain as they looked, they were incredibly detailed and time period specific. And I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah, art direction was fantastic on both films.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
agreed.
A great point. That's
Yeah,
a great
and
point,
then
Sam.
okay, did any of you at the end of Citizen Kane, where the camera's moving over his vast collection of art and artifacts, did any of you think of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's on
I
purpose.
realize. For me, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark first, so that scene made me think of Raiders of the Lost Ark as opposed to the other way around. But now I realize, well, that could be in its own way a reference to Citizen Kane.
It is, and Spielberg has said as much that that end of Raiders of the Lost Ark is the same is a nod to Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
In fact,
and it's definitely there.
Spielberg has the original Rosebud sled hanging over his computer when he writes,
Oh,
What?
to remind himself that quality of the story always comes first.
He has that lady's clitoris above his what? It's
hanging above his computer.
I hope it's in a jar.
Yeah.
It's like,
She's like, Steven.
clitoris.
Yeah, Steven, I'm thirsty.
Oh, God.
You don't
Shut up,
touch
I'm writing.
clitoris.
That's awesome.
Honey, have you seen my clitoris?
yeah, Spielberg has it still. All right, we'll tell him we need it back.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh boy.
You guys you spoke at the beginning of the podcast about Citizen Kane. Essentially, it was nominated for Oscars, but it was not well received. And despite all the publicity, the film was a box office flop and was quickly consigned to the RKO vaults. Can't even say three letters correctly. At 1941's Academy Awards, the film was booed every time one of its 9 nominations was announced.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, when it comes down to the history of film, Oscars and box office are like two of the worst indicators that you can have.
That's right.
Quick, who won the Oscar for Best Picture last year?
There was a lot more to it in this case because actually I checked out. There's something on the American Experience, PBS's webpage about the Citizen Kane debacle and what it was about the battle over it, and a lot of the reasons that. First of all, there's a lot of theaters that wouldn't show it because Hearst had dirt on all these studio executives,
right?
To the point where it's been long legend and pretty much confirmed by several people's biographies that Louis B. Mayer was trying to buy it so that he could burn the negative of it. Hearst had so much dirt on these people that they were afraid of what would come out if they sided with Orson Welles. A lot of theaters didn't show it, and RKO quickly put it in the vault and wanted to put it to bed. But it wasn't until years later that it really started to receive the acclaim that it deserved. But I really had no idea of how much of a campaign that Hearst had against the film. Well, now knowing it was about his ex-girlfriend's clitoris, I can understand why. But seriously, there was a hardcore press to squash this movie.
Oh yeah,
and a point when the only point of advertising for a lot of people to see what was playing was newspapers. It was like. It really hurt both of them in the long run. It hurt Wells's career, and it kind of made I think Hearst was in the 70s or something when this came out, so it really made his last years miserable. But yeah, there was an unprecedented campaign against this movie that has never been seen since.
Yeah, and I think Orson Welles movies, despite their status as classic and influential films. Really did suffer from a box office standpoint. I'm not sure he was ever really extremely successful with any of his movies, including Touch of Evil.
I don't believe he was.
Whoa. Transformers the movie, that he was pretty good in that.
Yeah, he was. I was going to bring that up.
And the Muppet movie, he was also good in that. So
wait,
I don't think we can make a blanket.
True.
Yeah, he was Unicron. He voiced Unicron, and then asked afterwards, like at some press deal, he's like, I don't even know what that is. Like he just, it was a paycheck. Died. Yeah, it was a paycheck.
And he died like 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
Well, and he had such a colorful career. Like reading on what happened in his career, he spent it trying to make independent films. He was so scorned by what happened with Citizen Kane that he was determined to do it by himself, and he really could never recreate that magic. So he did a lot of crappy appearances on TV's Love Boat and other things like that to pay the bills, and never really quite found his way back.
Which is funny though, because Magnificent Ambersons and Touch of Evil. He made some really, really great films. It's not, it's not all crap.
Right.
Oh no, and that's the sad part of it.
That's pretty weird. That's one of his 70s movies.
Has
anybody else seen that?
Which one?
What's that?
It's called F is for Fake.
Oh, I've heard about this.
It's really weird, but it's like that's the kind of stuff he was doing toward the end of his career. But no doubt he does have a great, slate of early films that he was involved with, and Jeff, definitely check out F is for Fake. It's really weird.
My earliest memories of Orson Welles were I believe Mogan David commercials. We sell no wine before it's time.
I don't remember that.
Do you remember those? Oh, he was. Yeah, that was a big thing. His line was, "We sell no wine before it's time."
Didn't he do like pea?
I believe it was Mogan David
as well. Didn't he do pea commercials?
Like what?
The vegetable peas, like peas commercials. Like, didn't he do that?
Are we still talking about Citizen Kane?
No, we're talking about Orson Welles, but I could have just had a stroke. I don't know.
There's definitely some funny outtakes of him doing wine commercials when he's drunk on the internet. Have you seen those?
He was on Magnum PI. Sorry.
I will not allow you to tear this man down.
One of the regulars on the Love Boat. This is the overall category, so it fits.
I have video of Daniel Day-Lewis peeing in an alley, so there, it's all good.
All right.
He was probably in character.
Let me see. I'm trying to get some good stuff, Tom. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get good stuff.
He was very good, Tom. Very good.
Oh, okay.
I guess it must have been Paul Masson was the one.
For Citizen Kane, Orson Welles, along with cinematographer Greg Toland, pioneered deep focus, a technique that keeps every object in the foreground, center, and background in simultaneous focus. This brought a sense of depth to the two-dimensional world of movies, and that's used a lot by. Now I can't even think of his name. He did the Black Dahlia.
Brian De Palma?
Yes, De Palma uses that a lot in his films. Thank you.
Although I think De Palma uses more of a split screen, like a split technique. Where I think I'm looking at some Citizen Kane shots, and I was like, I don't have any cameras that could do that. That it's funny because those kind of shots I'm trying to get away from. I want thin depth of focus, and that's how I create depth now in 2013. But back then they were able to deep focus, and it's just, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting shift in the filmmaking.
Not to take away from Citizen Kane, but while on location in Marfa, Texas, No Country for Old Men was the neighboring film production. One day, Paul Thomas Anderson and his crew tested the pyrotechnical effects of the oil derrick fire, causing an enormous billowing of smoke, intruding the shot that Joel and Ethan Coen were shooting. This caused them to delay filming until the next day. When the smoke dissipated, both this film and No Country for Old Men would eventually become leading contenders at the Academy Awards a year and a half later.
It's the location.
Location.
Yes.
But all right, you guys want to vote for this, or do you have anything else to throw into the overall besides wine commercials and
clitorises
and music?
All of my favorite things.
I prefer pronouncing it clitoris, but is that just me?
I say it either or. Sometimes Little Man in the Boat. So yeah,
okay,
whatever.
Okay.
Now you'll say Rosebud.
All right, Gabe.
Well, this is tough. I think both of these are really great films, and like I said earlier, kind of classics in their own ways. But I think because of the history, the innovations, and everything that Citizen Kane brought to cinema, and so boldly, I think I have to give my overall vote to Citizen Kane.
All right, Sam.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Citizen Kane.
All right, Tom.
I'm gonna give it to There Will Be Blood.
Really?
I am.
Okay.
I've seen them both about a dozen times, and I think There Will Be Blood. It's funny. I watched that one last. I watched them both back to back yesterday, and I watched I think if I'd switched it, Citizen Kane might have won overall. It's whichever one I saw last.
That one is most recent memory.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I watched them the other way around, so maybe that.
Ooh, There Will Be Blood is good. Ooh, Citizen Kane is good. Yeah.
All right. Let me attempt to do math once again, and this takes us on to our recommendations, fellas. We'll go ahead and start with Sam.
Well, this is when I was watching Citizen Kane, it got me thinking of something I haven't seen for quite some time. There was an HBO made movie back in 1999 called RKO 281, which is basically the telling of the making of Citizen Kane, and it stars Liev Schreiber as young Orson Welles. James Cromwell is also in it. It's got a lot of some of the stuff that we talked about today, as far as the taking an axe to break through the studio floor to get the camera angle just right. It's a little showy, and it's a little bit. I think some of it is exaggerated for the movie itself, but it's actually kind of an interesting look at the production of a movie that basically would put the nail in RKO Studios and find them, shut down not a few years later after it was made.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Gabe?
Well, I think of both of these movies as epic in scope, both from a production standpoint and from a story standpoint. And so I was trying to think of other movies that I thought were were epic in nature. And one that came to mind was, believe it or not, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The old spaghetti western with Clint Eastwood. And you know, a lot of people kind of pan these movies because of some of the production value, you know, the dubbing and the voices and some of the sound effects and that kind of stuff. But when you watch them, you realize how really well made they are. They're good stories with good cinematography and you know, fairly decent acting, great music in some of them, very memorable movie music. Especially in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm sure everybody knows the main theme from that. So I think for another epic type movie that's really kind of fun to watch, I would recommend The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
All right. Tom?
I'm scrambling here. The recommendation that I would like to make is the 1941 Orson Welles classic Citizen Kane.
Wait. Hold on.
But hang on. Let me finish. But what I want everybody to do is go out and get the 70th Anniversary Ultimate Collector's Edition on Blu-ray that they have out. The reason being, first of all, it comes with this really awesome hardcover book that includes sketches and drawings from the art department. I know this sounds stupid, but it includes receipts from the pre-production planning in terms of how much they paid everybody and emails, cease and desist letters from William Randolph Hearst Company. But most importantly, it includes the most spectacular restoration of this film I've ever seen. And a lot of us said we watched this in film school, 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. The Blu-ray restoration of Citizen Kane is absolutely beautiful. And I got up really, really close to my plasma screen, and it was jaw-droppingly good. But also included in this really awesome set.
You must be really close to your plasma screen again.
Yes. But
because you're getting the alien voice.
Alien voice?
Yep.
Hello.
There you go.
Ground control to Major Tom. Nobody got that. You guys. Okay.
Oh,
anyway,
no, I got it.
Okay. So
I was trying to think of the other lyrics.
You also get what?
I was trying to think of the other lyrics. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right. In the set, you actually get the same. You get RKO 281, the film that Sam recommended, and then also the American Experiences Battle Over Citizen Kane documentary that they did on PBS. And it is an awesome set. If you like Citizen Kane, this is the best set. You get all three movies and all this other supporting material, and it is super mega cheap on Amazon right now.
How much does it run?
$37 for the whole set.
Well,
I paid $70 for it the day it came out. So
I know what I'm doing.
It's come down quite a bit, and it's an absolute gorgeous set, and the design on it's beautiful. It's really awesome. So I know it's stupid, but I'd like to recommend Citizen Kane for my recommendations today.
And I just ordered it. Thanks, Tom.
Is that what that ding was?
Ding? No, I don't know what the ding was.
No, that was my wife saying that she's not on Netflix.
Oh, fair enough.
So
my recommendation is something that I binge watched 2 days ago, in fact, and that is the original Netflix show called House of Cards. And we're kind of talking about larger than life characters. I think Kevin Spacey is trying to work towards that in this show. And oh, I'm sorry, I just saw some conversation going on in the chat window. I think it's really well written. It's well directed. They have a lot of guest directors on. Schumacher was on. And also, I can't remember. But anyway, they have a lot of guest directors come in. They do 1 or 2 episodes. Kevin Spacey is brilliant. But I also want to point out Robin Wright, who plays his wife, Claire Underwood. She is spectacular. Like, she just looks like she is a snake in the grass, ready to bite. So if you get the chance, watch the first season. It's up on Netflix, and I believe Tom told me it starts February 14th. Is that right, Tom?
That's correct. Correct. Corey Stoll is also on that, and I think Corey Stoll's performance on House of Cards is the best acting in the last 5 years. It was
exactly. He plays Peter,
so
right?
Good.
He played Peter. Oh my God! Yeah, just brilliant.
He was really great too in Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris. I think he's got quite a good future for him. So I love him in pretty much everything he does anymore.
Yeah, he was brilliant. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm just trying to find the... Oh, here we go. James Foley, Alan Coulter, David Fincher, Carl Franklin, Charles McDougall, and Joel Schumacher all did episodes. Generally, it's 2 apiece, but James Foley did 9 episodes.
Did Schumacher's have a butt shot?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe... Wait, maybe it did, because there's... I can't remember. I'd have to go back and see. I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, check it out. It's an 8.9 rating on IMDb, where both of these films, Citizen Kane and There Will Be Blood, were above 8 as well. So yeah, go check out House of Cards. It's free. It's on Netflix. Well, I mean, you pay for Netflix, but check it out. All right, you guys want to hear who won?
Yeah, I actually don't know.
Yeah, this one will be relatively close.
It is relatively close, and this pleases me greatly. No, here we go. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Citizen Kane!
This was a pretty heavy episode, just for the films. I mean, not only being long, but the heavy subject matter. So I look forward to next month. But I'll get to that as soon as I get to where people can find you guys on the Webernets. Hopefully stalk you. Tom.
People can check me out on Facebook and Vimeo, and they can check out, yes, my award-winning wedding films at weddingdayrewind.com. We got an awesome award this week. So
Oh, did you?
So
what was it?
We did. We were named Wedding Wire's Couple Choice Award for being one of the top 5% videographers in the country. So,
dude, congratulations.
Very nice.
Thank you
That's
very much.
awesome.
Thank you.
Well earned. Would totally. If I was able to vote for that, I totally would have.
Yeah.
You do great work, Tom. Well deserved.
Very
Thank
well
you
done.
very much.
I
Very
agree completely. I haven't seen all of the other videographers, but I'm pretty sure yours is really good.
Trust
Well,
me,
thank you
I've
very
seen
much.
Really
some.
Fuck those other videographers.
I've seen some pretty bad ones. So yeah, Tom, that's awesome. That's great news.
Thank you very much. We're very excited about it. So,
Gabe.
looking
You've
forward
got
to
to follow
2015.
that up.
Well, I can't follow that up exactly, but I'll try.
You got sexiest man
you can-
alive, right?
You can find me on Facebook. You can also check out onegenomeshort.com. And I guess I do have a little bit of news about our 48-hour film. And I don't know if you guys know these things. It's been accepted into a film festival called the Laugh Out Loud Short Film Festival.
Nice.
And
Sweet.
it's going to show in 80-plus theaters around the country. So we're very excited about that.
Awesome.
We're very happy about that.
Yeah, congratulations. That
Congratulations.
thing has gotten some legs. You guys have been traveling with that. Have you been putting it into all the festivals or?
Yeah, it was recommended by some of our actors. You know, they said, "Hey, would you consider putting in this festival?" And so it's actually been in the Iowa Independent Film Festival,
Yep.
which was up in Mason City, the Wild Rose Independent Film Festival in Des Moines, and now the Laugh Out Loud. And some people are suggesting we put it into the Iowa Motion Picture Awards, and I'm thinking about that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. My only thing about doing that, I'm putting one in, but mine's going to be for documentary. But it's the price that you pay.
Yeah,
The
it's a
entry
little.
fee
That's what I was going
is
to say. Yeah, and I think you have
horrendous.
to pay for each category that you
Yes.
enter it into.
Yes,
So you
you
have to
do.
be fairly selective about what you put it into.
Yep. And also, just real quick, that we had the Formula Show along with your film. Well, not along with it, but
Yeah.
also at the Wild Rose, and then.
It did very well in the awards too.
Yeah, and then we also had some friends before this last feature that we shot. They were actually up there 2 days before we started to shoot at the Iowa Independent Film Festival up there in Mason City. Yeah, and they brought up the fact that they saw your film and thought,
no kidding.
thought it was great. So
Cool.
I forgot
That's
to
very
pass
nice.
that on to you since I
Yeah,
don't get to
and-
see anymore, Gabe.
Yeah, I know it's been a little while.
I have a girlfriend and I can't. Sorry.
And then I also heard one of the actresses in our film said that a director had seen it and really enjoyed our 48-hour film, and actually enjoyed her performance in it. And now she's working with him on another project as a direct result of that film.
Great.
So yeah,
That's
it's really
awesome.
very exciting because it's nice to see this short little film that we put together in just 48 hours get some life outside of that context, and see that it actually has it can be enjoyed without even having to know that it was made for the 48 hour.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Sam.
Well, that's great, Gabe, and that's exactly what we've been telling filmmakers for years. Is you enter these films in competitions outside because there's such amazing pieces of work that it doesn't matter. People don't have to know they were made in 48 hours to to enjoy them, and congratulations on your success. That's a great story for all of our filmmakers to hear that, and congratulations to you and your team for getting that out there in all those theaters, and I hope it goes over very well for you. People can find me on Facebook. We're getting ready for the 10th anniversary of the 48-hour film project here in Des Moines. It's kind of a year-long undertaking for me, but we've got some really big things planned. We're going to give away a lot of cash and prizes. We're going to have more teams than we ever have, and it's going to be a hoot. I got to come up with something better than it's going to be a hoot, but it's going to be fucking fun, bitch. I better not use that one either. Either way, 48hourfilm.com/Des Moines, and you can find me on Facebook, Samuel Pace Twom.
All right. Well, congratulations, everyone. That's awesome on the awards and all the great news. Hopefully 2014 keeps going this way. I mean, right?
Yep.
We're getting some good stuff. And of course, we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. I forgot real quick. You could follow me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Search Southsider Studios or Mike Keeler. And you can contact us, the podcast, at cinesmack@gmail.com. Give us some more ideas. Give us some feedback on maybe you disagree that Citizen Kane shouldn't have won. Let us know why. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. So, we were thinking about it. We're like, okay, every time we've done a February show, it's always been about love. So, we're going to kind of turn it on its side a little bit. So, for February, we are going to conquer two comedy giants as Airplane takes on Blazing Saddles. And Tom reminded me, well, all of us, that we have never done a Mel Brooks film on the show. So this should be exciting. So for Gabe, Tom, Sam, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.